Grab hold of that, Darren, and we'll just pull the cover off. So I always find it interesting if you cover things up for a while and bring it back out and you get a fresh look at it, because we get too close to these things, and what happens is you sort of get used to seeing it over and over, and all you see is the things that are wrong with it. So the idea today is to get it out, go over it, work out what we've got to do, and most of it's cosmetic, but we've got to lift the front up because it's a bit low from a steering point of view, and get our wheel alignment and stuff done. But the biggest thing is door gaps and those sorts of things. So we're going to get on with that, and I'll try and make sure we do some footage of all the things we're doing so that you can understand what the process is. Now, I think the first thing to understand here is we were well aware of where we were at with the car when we took it to Summernats, and that was the fact that we really didn't have a lot of time left, wanted to make the car look good for the public, but I knew there was some deficiencies in relation to our judging. So what we've done now is Darren and I have just gone around and measured all of the gaps between the body panels and glass and those sorts of things. And to give you an idea what we're working with, this was all fitted up and correct in primer. Then we go off to paint, and in the process we change a few things like the boot hinges. The actual gas rams that we were using weren't then strong enough to hold the boot up. The ones I ordered that came turned out to be a lot stronger than we needed, so they're still on it now, and they're putting a bit of pressure on the hinges and things. But to give you an idea, so we're 3.8mm here, 5.5 there, so obviously it needs to go that way. And if you move the boot that way by loosening off the hinge and pushing it this way, obviously then you've got to make sure this gap's right. So what we have at the moment is the boot is actually 2mm too far that way. So we know that if we come 2mm this way, it'll close that gap up. The gap between the glass, or the stainless here and the boot, is 3mm, and on that side it's 6.4. So same thing, we come this way a couple of mil, it'll give us 5. We might have to go 0.5 mil that way. That'll square everything up and make it fit. And then the way this is sitting up here, I've got bump stops on the inside that aren't factory, and clearly this one's too high. So we can make all of that work, we've just got to pull everything apart to do it. And that's the reason it didn't happen for Summernats, is from a time point of view. Righto, so if we move around to the door, so we've done all these measurements. So you'll see there, 3 on each level, and then up here, because we spent a lot of time, Darren spent a lot of time making sure these fitted evenly to this pillar. So at the moment, the back door pretty much looks good the way it fits in there, because it's 5.3, 5.3, 4, 3.8, 3.4, and then pretty much 4mm all the way down that back edge. So we're comfortable where it's sitting, but it needs to come forward probably 1mm, maybe 0.5 millimetre. And that seems ridiculous, but when you're working on these sort of tolerances, that 0.5 mil makes a difference. So where we got 4.3 and 5.3, if we move it 0.5 mil, it'll be equal. So what we've got to do is to work out how we do that. So the back door is fairly simple, because we can do it, we can open this door up and get to the hinges. And to move it forward, I normally take the back of the door, Darren takes the front. He'll undo the top hinge off the body. I'll lift the door up. To move 0.5 mil, I'm probably going to come up 3 or 4 mil. He's going to watch it move, tighten it up, and then undo the bottom one, and we'll drop it down. So we move 0.5 mil at the top, 0.5 mil at the bottom, put it back on the striker, and we should have gone forward. We check our measurements. When you're trying to deal with 0.5 mil, what normally happens is it goes a little bit too much or not quite enough. Yeah. It might take 3 or 4 goes to do that. So that one's going to be fairly simple. If you come around behind me, Louise, and look straight onto the door here, we've got 5s, 5.2 and then 6.6. And one of the issues with the front guard you can get a little bit of movement in that guard this way, simply because of the fact there's 2 bolts down the bottom, 1 up in here, and quite a lot in this front section, but the guard will move a mil or 2 through this bottom section without putting too much pressure on. But what we've got is 3.4 to 4, so there's half a mil out. So if we pick this up on the front, it'll rock that back in, because we're nearly a full millimetre too much there. That whole door needs to rotate this way. Now to do that, we've got to take the front guard off. Take the front guard off, we've got to take the spoiler off and the bumper and the grille. So the reason we're going through this process now is we want to be able to make sure we know exactly what we're going to do before we take the front off the car. So that's this side, and I won't bore you with the other side as well, but looking at the front, one of the issues with these cars is the width of the car, or the doors, determines the gaps in the bonnet. So once you get this all squared up here, we normally have around a little finger gap here, about 10 mil. Once that guard, the door's in place, that sets where this goes, which then creates this gap. So if you have the door out too far, the guard's then out too far. So at the moment we've got 6.2 and 5.2, so an average of 5.6 or something, which is about what we want, 5.5. So these gaps, all our gaps and squareness through the front, I'm really happy with. So we don't need to change the door in and out. But if this gap was too wide, we'd have to move the door here as well. So it's really about knowing what you've got before you pull it all apart, because once you put it back together again, if it's not right, the guard's got to come off again. So the next bit of video we'll do is taking the front off and then working out what we've got to change to get our gaps where they need to be. Righto, so we ended up with 4.8.
Yeah.
4.8, 4.6, something like that. So what we're going to do now is match the other side up. So we've got 4.4, 4.4 and 4.4. And just to give people an idea about what we're dealing with here. So we're talking about 0.4 or 4.4. So if I take the gauge here and zero it, and that's just my business card, that business card is 0.4. So when we're talking about there's a 0.4 difference, we're talking about the width of a business card. So very little. So at the moment, we really want to come forward
half a mil or 0.4.
0.4 width of that business card. And then that's going to close us up a little bit because we need this door to come forward, and we know that because of this measurement here, and these we've got 4, 3.8, 3.4. So to do that, what we're going to do now is I'm going to take one end, Darren's going to take the other. So I'll get myself set down here so that I can control what I'm doing. So we're just going to loosen off that front hinge. Well, it's not a hinge, yeah, it's a hinge. You got the top one already done?
Yep.
It's about there. So I've gone up about 3 mil, I reckon. I'm just going to have a look. I reckon I'll come. Yeah, it's gone up. So that's moved it that way. Now we're going to loosen the bottom one and let it fall back down. Did you take them? About there. Part of the problem is when you tighten the bolts back up, it actually moves it on the body. So sometimes it takes a few goes. So that's nicely lined up. So we're not moving the lock or the striker, so it should go back on. And you heard how nicely that closed. .5, so we obviously moved and then went back again, and that happens sometimes. It's interesting, it's 4.5 above the line, 4.3 below, and we're 4.4 there. Might just go once again. We're talking such a small amount, you'd hardly think it's worth doing, but 3 lots of half a mil turned into 1.5 mil, and then it becomes noticeable. Is it moving on there, on the body, or just is it rocking and rolling on the hinge?
Just rocking and rolling on the hinge, isn't it?
About now. Right.
To go up and just watch it.
4.5, it's not really moving. We might have run out of adjustment as well. That happens as well.
Just double check the other side, because that's the other side I had a measure and it's about 4.6.
But we're relatively happy with where we're at. We just want to try and make sure they're as even as possible. Yeah, 4.7. I mean, you can move up and down and get a variation anyhow. It's 4.7. 4.7. I think I'd be happy with where it is. 4.45. We've definitely come up to 4.3 there now. 4.7. So I'd be happy with that to stay where it is. Righto. And there we go, the next one. This looks really tight now. 3.7. 2.4. Righto, so now we're going to do the same one again here. A little bit high on this back striker as well. So I'm after a full mil. You want to take that, or you can see?
Yeah, you can see on this. Loosen some of the bolts. Yeah.
You need a longer handle, mate.
That's ratchet.
Eh?
Let's have it.
Right. Oh.
Well, that might be alright actually.
Right, now we'll do the bottom one because I'm way high, because you've got to go about 5 mil up at the back to get a mil at the front. All right. All right.
Yep.
I can visibly see that's better, so it's 5.2, 4.7, 5.1. What are we looking for? Just a little bit less than that. I reckon. So that moved 1.4.
I'll tape that so I know exactly where I am now.
So this wants to come down a bit on this striker. So I'm going to drop that down first because that'll give us a little bit.
Yep.
So I've just gone down probably 1.5 mil. Get our body lines right. Got a little bit of wood, Darren, have we? So you can put it like that, but if you put it this way, you can tell whether it's rocking, because that's not far off. And then through these it's more visual, you can use the lights. It's not too bad. .9. So by coming down 1.5 mil, it's actually closed it up by 0.2. So 4.9, I'd nearly be happy with that, wouldn't you, Darren?
Getting there.
Getting there.
Getting there.
5.
0.3 of a mil between front and back.
Eh?
0.3.
Oh, you think to bring the whole lot back? 4.9, it's 0.3, 0.4, 0.4, half a mil. You want to sneak it back a little bit?
Again, fraction, yeah.
All right. Well, that was enough. Part of the problem is, because we've got this nice shiny 2-pack paint on both surfaces, it doesn't take much to move it. Alright.
Oh, too much.
You feel that lifting up as you tighten it. .65. Move 0.3, 4.6, 4.7, 4.6. I'd call that a match.
Done deal.
And tighten them up. So that's all within 0.2 as well. So we spent a lot of time making these even before it all gets pulled apart 2 or 3 times, goes back together. So we know we should be able to get it back fairly close, but sometimes things just change as you go. So the next thing we want to look at now is along the body line to get this shape here right here. And this back door is looking real good. I don't know if we're going to get it much better than that, but you can see here where you can see the end of the door. I'll just move them out the way. And it's pretty consistent all the way. So I might be able to just move the catch, move the striker. Just take it in a mill. Now because these have got the proper spaces on them now, which we spoke about in the previous video about not having them, we've got them all on now. They tend to grip the paint really good. We've got no gaps there. And then we've got probably 1 millimetre and then just a little bit more there. And then if we go up the top here, it's even there. So if I move the door out to fix that, then this won't be right. And sometimes it's a matter of whether this one's got to move or that one's got to move. And I can't, this door here is attached to the hinges here, so it's not going to move at all. But what I can do here now, and a lot of people might get a bit horrified by this, is if I just push on there and give that a pull, because we're looking for 0.5 millimetre. I didn't really gain anything, but I've picked up some of that here because I can't change too much now with what I've got, but what affects it is the door rubbers. So it looks to me to be just out a little bit here and out a little bit there and not so much in the middle. This catch feels like it's almost on its limit, this striker. So there's another adjustment in the back of the door where I can move the door out a bit. Remember when we're talking less than 1 millimetre most of the times, it doesn't seem hardly worthwhile even doing, but it does make a very big difference. Better up here. Could be just the door rubber holding that out. Pretty good from this way.
Nice here. if you took the back door out, it'd have to be top and bottom hinge.
Yeah, if we do top and bottom half mil, it'll actually probably move this back in a little bit as well, which we could probably do with. Because it's mounted sort of here.
Yeah.
You reckon?
It's out of, that catches out of travel.
Yeah, it was pretty much out to go that way. So one of the issues we have when we're doing this is that the car gets primed and rubbed and painted, and then we pull it all apart, and then the hinges have got, I don't know, up to 4 different directions. So you can adjust the striker on the actual pillar, you can adjust the door on the hinge in and out, up and down, backwards and forwards. So there's all these different adjustments. So it's a matter of taking your time and using your imagination about what's going to impact on where the door's going to go to get the effect you want. So, you know, we're thinking the door's got to go in, but the striker on the pillar's all the way in already, so we need to bring the door out. But when we move the door out, we've got to move top and bottom, otherwise it'll change this and this. And then when we change those, if we try and move it out, if you do both at the same time, the door will want to drop this way, and then you lose your adjustment that way. So it really is quite, just got to take your time, be very patient about what you do, and you'll get there in the end. If you crack that one, I'll pull it out.
Yeah.
That's, you know, a little bit, and then we can undo the bottom one, tighten it back up, and then undo the bottom one. So it's looking heaps better now. We just, that front door's just sticking out the slightest amount there, so we're just going to loosen the top of that door at the front now and just pull it out, you know, the tiniest amount, to see if we can pick up just a little bit more on that. If I set this up down here, righto. Right. Move.
Whoa.
It moved? Oh yeah. That's good now.
Just wait till I tighten it. May change it to fraction.
No, it's not moving.
No. I think it needed to come out in accordance to that as well.
Yep. I'm thinking that's pretty close to everything being where we want it. Righto, part of the process to get this car ready for MotorEx now, so we're definitely going, you know, that decision's now been made. And the little things that I talked about on the last show we did on this was the things that I thought were wrong with the car. We're working through some of those issues. So to give you an idea, that's the nut that was holding on the rack for the rack and pinion steering, and it's way up here out of the way that you can't sort of see it. But once the car goes up and gets on display, so we've just taken the gold one off, which doesn't obviously work very well with all the other colours, and gone to a stainless steel one. And those bolts were probably a ½ inch too long, so we've just trimmed those off. So now when you look in there, they don't look so prominent. So things like these cables, so they were all covered in tape residue where they'd been taped together in that process while we're sort of making everything fit. And then for some of that, we had some plastic tyres on them. So I've cut all the tyres off, cleaned it up, so that we can work out now whether we run a plastic sheathing like this one in the back here and put that over the top of the 3, you know, with some heat like that. So we can go like that, but with the 3 of them. and that'll just keep them all together nicely how it was planned and look the part. And then this is the sensor that came out of the 6-cylinder. So this has all been made by Paul at Anything Racing, and that sensor now picks up on the chopper wheel, but none of it was clean. So they were more interested in getting it running and not how it appeared. So now what we've done is we've actually pulled it off, cleaned it up. The bolt was hanging out 10 mil, so I've trimmed that off. So all those little things that when I look at the engine, it has a nice, cleaner, sharper look about it. And I use the term clean quite often. And when I say clean, I'm not talking about cleanliness. I'm talking about when I look at it, nothing grabs my eye. Where a little bracket might be a bit too long, there's a wire hanging down that I don't like. I'm going to talk to Luke tonight about where he's got this taped, you know, whether we can unpin that and put some heat shrink on it so that it's not sort of a bit daggy looking. Because when we go up in the air with the better mirrors, you're going to see that, where at some of that's you're looking down and you don't see it. So we're working our way through. The reason for all the masking paper on here is unfortunately we did some damage on the trailer on the rails. So I've just been putting a bit of filler in those where it had actually scratched through all the product, and I'm going to blow that in with some colour, put some primer on it, some colour. So I'm just working my way through, make sure all those things are right. And then you can see here, we haven't fixed this one yet, but this boot should come back over and cover that with a tie on it. And they were taken off to do the wheel alignment before we went, but because we ran out of time, it didn't get done. So lots of little things happening. The brakes, these are out of the box, but if you have a look at that one now, I don't know if we'll show up in the camera, that's pretty much stock. And on the other side, I've just been experimenting with some light polish, and you can see this one in real life has actually got quite a nice shine to it. And that's just using a very light polish that you would polish your car with, and just to bring that factory Brembo paint up. And it's all about doing the best with what we've got and making sure that all our colours and all our components all match and run and look nice and smooth and clean. Up the back here we've just mainly been cleaning, but a few of the things that we've had to face is, most people would know when you build a car like this, the springs settle. So fortunately we've got coilovers and we've got adjustment. So we've been able to pick up about 20 mil on the back because the back settled quite a lot. And on the front, we're actually going to go to a heavier spring because we can't get it as high as we need it. And hence why it's got the mark on from the trailer. So we've wound these up and we're happy with that. This is all now how to polish. So there's chrome and aluminium on the back of that. And when we went to assemble the car, it was interesting. You do all this work and go through all the hassles of trying to get everything right. This particular tailpipe, when we went to bolt it on, no, it was after it was bolted on, we had a leak. And we just had some black residue coming through from the moisture in the exhaust, and took it off to check the gasket, and it was actually, this flange had only been tacked on. So it had been tacked on with a TIG, so it was strong, but it obviously was going to leak. So we've been able to take that off. Darren's welded it up slowly with keeping it cool at the same time without damaging any of the ceramic coating. So obviously the ceramic coating works pretty well. So we fixed that up, taken both of them off, polished the tailpipes up how they were meant to be. So they're stainless. We've polished those. And my aim now that it's up in the air, I've given this a clean, it's all nice, there's no marks on it. I'm going to actually back mask to here now, around the bottom of these quarter panels, because this bottom edge didn't get the full treatment. So it's going to need a polish, you know, through this area, because it's a bit flat looking, and there's a little bit of overspray, and I've just got some sanding marks and stuff. So I've got to do that all the way through. So that'll be me working upside down with a sore neck, I imagine. So that's a wrap for this week. We're going to keep working our way towards MotorEx. We've still got quite a lot to do, so I'm going to actually bring you regular updates each week or two, depending on how much we get done and how much Louise gets to video. We'll put those together, put them up as a bit of a bonus. Don't forget, stay tuned, subscribe. If you've got any questions, make sure you ask, because I do get back to everybody, and I'm going to somehow or other jam in some events in between. So thanks for joining us on the show, and we'll see you on the next episode. everything that we're going to get.